Again, my name is Hunter Smith with Metastock. And as Renee said, I'm actually kind of filling in here for Mr. Jeffrey Gibby, who is sick at home with strep today, sadly enough. So Jeff is actually my counterpart here in the business development department. And I handle basically the Asia Pacific region as well as South America and a few other regions. And I work directly with a lot of our partners and professional traders in integrating some of their systems within Metastock. And you know, I do quite a lot of these presentations, and my goal here today is just to kind of go through a little bit of my workflow within Metastock and maybe show you a couple of different systems and give you an idea of kind of the general workflow of Metastock. Now, I'm going to be in PowerPoint here for just a moment, but I promise I'll get off of it here quickly. First off, I have to throw a disclaimer up here. If you guys have heard of Metastock before, some of you are using Metastock, and if you watched any of our webinars, this is the disclaimer we do every single time. The demonstration is designed to instruct you on using Metastock and accompanying software plugins. It's not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using the specific indicators and features into the software. In other words, guys, I'm not going to be giving you any specific trading advice. You know, we definitely want to point you in the right direction as far as a workflow you should be in, but I'm not going to tell you what to buy or sell. That'd be a very bad idea. Now, a couple of things. I'll actually jump straight into Metastock here. I'll end up covering some of the new features in the newest Metastock, but really what I want to get off to here first is getting into a little bit of a workflow with Metastock. Now, like I said, some of you have heard of Metastock. Many of you have probably even used Metastock before. Metastock, we've been in business for about 30 years now. And what we've always concentrated on doing is actually being a software that was built by a trader for traders. In other words, our software is designed to allow you to get into a workflow in a very, very short period of time. As traders, we can be very habitual. It's very good that we're habitual. We want to be able to establish a workflow, establish a system that works for us in our trading style. And we want to be able to get into that workflow every single day and do the same thing each and every single day. There's so many variables within trading. We want to be able to eliminate as many of those as possible. So if we do the same thing every single day, we're able to get very, very similar results. And that's one of the things that Metastock really allows you to do in getting into a workflow. For example, my workflow will typically start off by analyzing overall markets. I'm kind of a trader that focuses on a little bit more of a top-down approach. In other words, I'm going to look at my overall markets, see where they're moving, see where the strength is, and then be able to start my explorations or scans from that initial decision. So, for example, behind us right now, I have 3 charts open. So for the US market, I have the Dow open, I have the S&P 500, and I have the NASDAQ 100 open. Now, you may notice that there's some different signals on this chart, and I want to cover a little bit about what I'm using as far as these signals are concerned. Now, this is actually, and I'll kind of cruise through my PowerPoint here just to get to the right slide. Now, what I'm using here is actually the Haguro method. Some of you may have heard about it or read about it in Stocks and Commodities magazine, but it's a method that is essentially based on the philosophy that a rising tide raises all boats. Befriend the trend. There's a million of those sayings, but we want to move with the market. We don't want to fight the market's direction. But first off, we have to establish the market direction initially. Now, this was based off of a book called The Japanese Chart of Charts by Seki Shimizu. It was actually translated into English by a gentleman in Australia named Gary Burton. And Jeffrey Gibby actually met Gary at a conference a while back and really liked the system. So we actually wanted to put it into Metastock. Now, the basis of this system is to get a good idea of where the overall market is moving, where the forecast of the market is moving for the upcoming week. And we base that off of where the market has been, and we're looking at a couple of things here. Now, first off, this system is built within Metastock automatically. So once you buy Metastock, everything is actually inside of it already. But this is actually a system that is designed for only weekly charts, since we are looking at a weekly overview. Now, it's going to give us support and resistance on a weekly basis. It's going to take a look at key turning lines or key turning candles, and it's going to give us that fairly accurate view of weekly movement. Now, a couple of things to understand about this system before we actually take a look at it in action is the first step with it is we have to establish a midpoint line. Now, it is based off of candlesticks. Inside of the commentary, you're going to see candles referred to as lines. That's just the way that it was translated, and we kept it true to its translation in that way. But it doesn't matter what, to establish the midpoint, it doesn't matter what the actual candle body is doing. We're looking at the entire range of the candle. So we're going to establish a midpoint based off of the entire range of that candle. So that's the first step, is to establish this midpoint. Now, we could either have a midpoint every single week, or we could go a direction and try to set the most important candles apart, the more definitive candles, meaning there was more range. So the way that we do that is we establish that midpoint line. But the only time that we establish a new midpoint line is if the range of that candle is greater than the range of the previous candle. So if my range of this week's bar is larger than the range of last week's bar, I'm going to establish a new midpoint line. And what this does is it helps set up support and resistance for our weekly candles. Now, once we've established that midpoint line, we are actually going to identify different candle patterns. Okay, then we're actually going to start looking at where the body of the candle is. Now, the first set of candles are all of our bullish patterns, our bullish candles. Okay, the second set are all of our bearish candles. Now, they are all numbered. Okay, now the bullish candles are all numbered chronologically. The bearish are intentionally not chronological. That's something to note right off the bat. But it's okay. You don't have to memorize 16 candle patterns. Our commentary is actually going to walk you through each and every single definition of each candle that you see here. Okay, so the candles that we are looking for that are going to give us a definitive signal on this week's forecast are going to be a candle 3 and its bearish opposite or counterpart, a candle 15. Now, we can't just look at the actual midpoint itself. We want to also take in an example pivots as well. Okay, so we're looking at a pivot here. Let me get the right slide here. It's going to take a look at specific pivot candles. In other words, if we're starting to go to the downside or if we're reversing, etc. And it is also going to have a zigzag indicator to measure the distance from the last trough to peak. So what this is doing is it's actually going to establish the significance of the candle and the power of that candle and how much of a weight you should carry moving forward looking at the signal. So let's actually dive into it a little bit. Now, like I said, I have opened a couple of markets here. I have the Dow, I have the S&P 500, and I have the NASDAQ 100. I have applied the template for the Haguro method to all three markets because I kind of want a market overview to see where we're at and where we're possibly moving. Now let's pretend that this is the first part of the week, Okay, we are doing this webinar halfway through the week, so it's going to be lagging a little bit, but this is a good step to take on a Monday morning before the market opens, or even a Sunday evening, or over the weekend, to get a good determination of where the overall market is moving for this next week. Now, as you can see, I have all of my candle numbers above and below the candles. I have my midpoint line established here in my zigzag at the top. Now, what does all this mean? Okay, now with Metastock, we have a YouTube channel that has about an hour-long webinar on each and every single one of the add-ons we have. But if you watch that webinar, or if you're cruising through this webinar and you say, okay, well, I don't remember everything that he said or what each and every single candle means, all you have to do with Metastock is right-click on the chart, hover over Expert Advisor, come down to Commentary, and it's going to pop up our Expert Commentary window. Now, currently, I am on the Dow, and we have a candle. Let's select the candle 15, which was the significant candle that the last significant candle we were looking at. And what this does is it's actually going to give me a breakdown of what a candle 15 means. And typically, again, it's going to be, since it's basically a doji, it's going to give us a reversal signal. So the reversal line, when found at a high price area or a low price area. So as you can see with the Dow, a couple of weeks ago, we had this strong signal, and then the next week, sure enough, we actually came in and had a very bearish week that week. Now, it's going to give you more in-depth definitions. So when found at a high price area, close all of your long positions. When the following week trades and closes below line 15, take short positions. So in other words, we're looking at taking these short positions here because the next week's bar closed below this candle 15 right here. So as I can see, and typically most of the indices are going to move relatively congruent with each other. We have kind of a sideways movement, all the things going on in the market. The S&P 500 didn't quite generate that exact same signal, but it came pretty close. The NASDAQ 100 followed the same way. But I kind of want to take a look at a candle 2, because on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, the overview is saying that last week was a candle 2. Well, again, what does that mean? When this is a long line, the midpoint is set as future support for any declining prices. Concerning line 2, it appears at the outset of a rise in the market after a fall in prices. So what we're looking at here is this fall in price that we had with the S&P. It happened with the Dow as well as the NASDAQ, pretty much market wide. But we've established kind of a new support line. So we may want to start taking a look at longer positions at that point. Well, if I have a system that I trade, let's say that definitively I use the MACD. And I look at this and I say, okay, well, the market is looking to swing up a little bit here. Maybe I want to search for MACD signals across these markets. Well, that's about, we're looking at almost 1,000 instruments right off the bat. I can't open up that many charts. I don't want to do analysis on that many charts. Once I've gotten kind of a market overview, what I can do is go in and actually scan across all of these indices to find which instruments are generating these buy and sell signals. And this takes me to the next step in my workflow, which is actually doing these explorations. Okay, so I'm going to click on my Power Console button. I'm going to come down to my exploration tool. We call it an exploration tool. Some of you may call it a scanner, but what it gives me the ability to do is to take whatever specific criteria I want and scan across however many thousands of instruments you want to scan across to find those stocks that are meeting that specific criteria. So I can come in here, and we have many explorations that you can run right off of the bat. I have some extra ones in here working with a lot of our other add-ons and partners out there. Metastock has a very, very easy formula language to work with, and I think that that is part of the big draw that's why a lot of professional traders will actually use Metastock, is because it's so easy to implement their trading strategy and get into a workflow with it in a short period of time. For example, if you have an exploration that is specific to you, you've created over many years of research and analysis, you have real specific criteria that you look for, you can actually program it into Metastock and create an exploration off of it very, very easily without having to learn, C++ or a whole new formula language. We can also keep in mind, we can also do that for you if the language, if you don't want to deal with it at all, but we have a very, very good formula team. Got away from the point a little bit though. So we want to do an exploration. Now, one of the most basic strategies out there is the MACD. Okay, so using that, for example, it's not just MACD signals that Metastock can search for. If you notice, there are two MACD explorations. Now, on a side note, if you ever forget what the exploration is looking for, if you just hover over it, it's going to pop up this additional window, and it's going to tell you exactly what it's looking for. But again, there are a couple of ways to use the MACD. You can use the MACD to determine buy and sell signals based off of the direction of the trend when it crosses its signal line, whatever that signal line is to you. Typically it's a 9 period. But when it crosses above its signal line, that is a buy signal. When it crosses below its signal line, that's a sell signal. The other way to interpret the MACD is not just buy and sell signals, but it is also to identify overbought and oversold conditions. So I can take a look at the MACD expert system, which is going to include MACD buy and sell signals, as well as overbought and oversold conditions. Now I'm going to come down here and actually select a couple of the indices that we were just looking at. I selected the NASDAQ 100 as well as the S&P 500. So together we're going to be scanning right around 612 instruments. I'm going to do on a daily bar, since that's typically what we're looking for. Metastock does cover tick data, 1 minute bars, 5 minute bars, all the way up to quarterly and yearly, as well as custom time frames. But just for the demonstration's sake, I'm going to stick with a daily interval. So when I start this exploration, it's going to pop up this window, and it's going to take about 1 minute to run. So we're running through quite a few instruments here for a MACD signal. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick while this runs. Now, like I said, this is going to take about 1 minute. We're about halfway done, but the good news is that it's going to give you this status window. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can always take a look at the status. Now there's a couple of ways that you can actually use the exploration tool, and I want to cover that here again in just a second. It's not just searching for one specific criteria. You can also do larger explorations where you're using a few different system criterias with it, but I'll show you how to set that up here in just a second. Now this screen pops up as a report. Okay, now you'll notice that I have 5 different columns, well, 6 different columns here. The primary ones we're looking at are a buy signal, and just by double clicking I can arrange all of the instruments to the top that fit this signal. So we have our MACD buy signal, MACD sell signal, overbought as well as oversold conditions, as well as our ticker symbol. Okay. Now, if this was something that I ran the scan at the first of the week and I wanted to save this into a list, it's very, very easy to do. This is not something where I have to actually memorize it. But if I wanted to, we've returned about 60 different instruments here. That's still quite a few charts to open. And I think that the primary reason for that is the MACD is kind of a lagging indicator, and it's more of a blanket indicator. In other words, you're going to get a lot of results every single time you run it. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit more specific, once I find the MACD overbought and oversold, as well as buy and sell signals, if I want to whittle those results down even further, I can set up kind of a drip system for an exploration. So let's say that the MACD is only the first thing that I look for. Let's say that I also look for, let's take a look at some of our other indicators here. If I use the Teach Talk Trade Bollinger Band Oscillator, let's say that I use Bollinger Bands in my analysis. What I can do is actually select both explorations. So if you scroll to the top, you'll see that I have 2 explorations selected. I'm going to click on Use the Results from the Preceding Exploration. Now what this is doing is it's actually going to run the MACD expert system, that exploration first, and then any results that ring true for that exploration are actually going to drip down into a second exploration, which in this case is the Bollinger Band Oscillator. Okay, and I can see that just by clicking on the summary screen. If you ever actually wanted to change the order in which you run the exploration, you can just click on, let's say, the second one and click on the up arrow to move it to the top. But in this case, I want the MACD to run first. I want to take those results and I want to run it through the Bollinger Band Oscillator by Teach Talk Trade and see if there are any results. Now, I actually have not run this exploration, so I don't know if we're going to get any results out of this one. Hopefully we do, but then I'll show you the next step in my workflow. Now, the exploration, there are really no limits on the exploration. Okay, you can run a lot of different explorations, 10, 15 explorations across an entire market, all optionable stocks if you want. But the ability to run through thousands and thousands of instruments to find very, very specific criteria will end up saving you hours and hours on your actual analysis so that you don't have to go through and hand pick through each and every single chart. Okay, so let's take a look. And we actually did get a few that came through as far as the Bollinger Band Oscillator running through the results of the MACD. So what I've done is I've taken 700 instruments and I've whittled it down to possibly 8 instruments that I can now open up the chart, apply my different indicators, and really do a little bit more analysis. Now, the next step for me is to run a system test. Now, a system test, in my opinion, is very, very important. Now, the reason for that, I'm just going to run this MACD expert system exploration again so that we have it a list made for it automatically. But a system test is very, very important, and it's one of the things that really sets Metastock apart. Every stock, every instrument that you trade has a different behavior. That's why this whole stock trading thing is so difficult, because every instrument is going to move a little bit differently. It's going to have a different behavior based off of market conditions, especially when you start implementing variables like, well, what do you look at when you trade? Do you look at Bollinger Bands? Do you look at moving averages? Do you look at stochastics, or do you look at fundamental research, etc.? All of these different things can play a different role and have a different outcome as far as when you're looking at a stock. Apple may trade very, very well with moving averages, but something more volatile won't trade as well with moving averages. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take our system as a trader. We want to take our criteria that we look for in a trade and say, okay, if I was to look at the Bollinger Band Oscillator on these 50 or so instruments, and if I was trading those signals on those 50 or so instruments over the course of the last year, how would I have done? Because as stock traders, what we're looking at is we're looking at past performance as somewhat of an indication of future movement. We want to look at what happened in the past to determine what our movements moving forward should be, or that stock's reaction. Okay. The Metastock system tester is going to allow us to run these system tests very easily. Now, we were looking at the Bollinger Band oscillator. So we come in here to our system test and we run the Bollinger Band. Now, our last exploration, we're going to actually run it across all 54 because we just did that exploration, so it automatically saves it as in a temporary list as the last exploration that was run. Now, when you're running a system test, it's really important that you're accurate as far as what type of trader you are. So for example, if I only take long trades, this right side here, I'm going to start customizing what my trading philosophy is. So if I only take long trades, I'll select long trades or short trades. I'll select both just to kind of get a good idea of the movement either way. I'm going to load 250 daily records, which basically means I'm testing over the past year. So if I was trading the Bollinger Band oscillating system over the past year, how would I have done? What would that performance have been? What you always want to do before you do a system test is actually click on trade options, and you want to get even more specific about the type of trader that you are. So first off, I want to come in here and be honest about my account. Okay. Now, if I put $1 million in here, but I only actually have $5,000 in my account, it's going to sway that system test significantly, especially when we start looking at brokerage fees. So if we're charged X amount of dollars to enter a trade and to exit a trade, and we're trading a system that trades very, very often, we have to account for that. So if I have a smaller account size, yet 50% of my profit is being eaten away by brokerage fees because I have to trade this system so many times to generate any type of equity in my account, then I can see that through our system test, and I know that it's not worth it. So I want to be very honest about the account that I'm trading with. So initially, I'm going to start my equity off at $10,000. Now I want to establish what my risk per trade is going to be. I can do this a couple of different ways. I can do number of units, I can do a transaction cost per trade, or I could do a percentage of my available equity. So with the percentage of available equity, I have set it at 10%, meaning let's say that 6 months into this test, I generate $3,000. We are now trading with 10% of $13,000 versus just 10. So it's going to account for that profit that we add to our account along the way. Brokerage, have to pay to play this game, sadly enough. So like we were just talking about, I want to be pretty realistic about my brokerage fees, my margin requirements. I can also adjust for slippage and when I'm actually executing my trades. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this system test. Now it's running the simulation here at the bottom. Okay, now you can actually go, let's say that, for example, you're running a large system test, you're running one system over 3,000 instruments. It's obviously going to take a little bit longer than 20 seconds to run it, but I can actually go out and do other analysis, or I can be on different web pages, etc., or continue doing analysis through Metastock, and this box is going to pop up wherever I'm at. I just click on view results and it's going to give me this entire report. Hope you guys can see that okay. Now it's going to give me a couple of columns on this system test right off of the bat. Okay, the first one of which obviously it's going to cover my instrument symbol, date range, and all of that stuff, but there are two columns here that I'm going to pay very, very close attention to. I bet you can guess the first one, which is net profit. I want to know how much money I made over the course of the last year trading this system. So if I click at the top of the column, double click that, it's going to arrange my highest results to the very top. That way I can actually just focus on the ones that generated the most income. The second column I am going to pay a lot of attention to is how many trades I had to place to generate that type of income. Now, the reason that I focus on this column as well is because we're all in different situations. You know, some of us are retired and trading is all we do, and we like to trade 5 times a day. Others have 40-hour-a-week jobs, and we can only trade maybe a couple of times a month. That's the type of trader that we want to be. So I want to be able to match this system with a instrument that is trading well, but I want to be able to work effectively at the same time. So if I generate $1,000 of income based off of one trading system, and I work a 40-hour-a-week job, but it had me trading 50, 60 times that year, it's not really worth it for me. That's not realistic for me moving forward to be able to continue to trade that system. It's too much work. So I want to look at something that only trades maybe 10 times a year or 12 times a year, something in that range. Let's take a look at our first result. I'm going to go ahead and click on view. Now the screen that it brings up, pardon me, screen that brings up is actually the complete results of the system test. Now, some of the information you're going to use, a lot of the information you won't, but a couple of key things to point out here. Number one is, of course, our profit. We generated $789, or about 7.8% performance on our account over the course of the last year, trading this Bollinger Band system on, let's see, we're on Murphy Oil Corp right now. Now, one of the other interesting things that it has here is buy and hold profit. So it's going to give me it's going to give me 2 scenarios right off the bat. It's going to say, okay, well, you were actively trading Murphy Oil Corp with the Bollinger Band system over the course of the year. You would have generated basically $789. If you had just bought and held this stock at the first of the year, you would have actually lost money. Now, some of you trend traders are going to look at this and say, well, you know, obviously it's more effective for me to actively trade this stock. In another example, you'll see some that the buy and hold profit, like an Apple, that is a very, very trending stock, the buy and hold performance is going to be very, very high on it. Now, depending on what system you're using to trade Apple, it may be beneficial just to buy and hold it over a longer period of time. But this is going to give you, this report is going to give you that if scenario so that you can kind of weigh it out. It's also going to give me my trade summary. The total amount of trades that I placed is 8 over the course of a year. My trade efficiency was pretty darn good. It's going to show me my profitable trades. I had 3 long trades and 3 short trades that were profitable. I lost twice, but my average profit was much higher than my average loss. And in this specific scenario, I actually won more than I lost. I won more times than I lost, which honestly, as traders, on average, you are going to lose more times than you win, but it's about capturing more profit in those times that you do win versus your losses. Okay, so if I win 500, like each trade that I place that I win, I'm generating on average $500. And every time I lose, I only lose $50. On average, I am still far ahead of the game. So that's always something to consider. You may lose more times than you win, but as long as you're maximizing that profit in the times that you are winning, that's how you're going to profit long-term as a trader. So it's going to break down my total trade efficiency. It's going to give me all of my accounting, you know, so for example, all our commissions are going to be listed right here, like I was talking about earlier. If you have a smaller account and you're paying a lot towards commissions, you need to make sure that you're in a system that is trading well on a stock, number one, but number two, it's not trading a large number of times, because you don't want those brokerage fees to eat up all of your profits, especially on, like I said, a smaller account. Okay. Now, through these different tabs, you can actually take a look at a couple of different things: your orders, every single order that was placed, all of your position sizing. One of the things that I actually typically take a look at here and really focus on is my equity curve. Because I have $10,000 in a trading account, this is going to give me a visual overview of what that trading account has done over the course of the last year. So I look at it and I say, okay, well, my $10,000, I actually generated the majority of my income in the first 155 days, but I've been very, very stagnant since then. Over the course of the last 90 days, the last 3 months, my account has been very, very sideways, very stagnant. So this is something that I can take into my trading decision and say, well, you know, the Bollinger Band oscillator has been working with Murphy oil up until about 3 months ago. Is that an indication that this system is just not trading Murphy oil that well anymore? It's not predicting its movements as well anymore. So I can take that into account. Now, our ideal equity curve, obviously, is going to be pretty much straight up from corner to corner, okay? But that is never going to be the case. So we want to take a look at a few different things. This flat period, another thing to take into account is that my money could actually be out there trading something else and generating income if it's only moving sideways here. Okay, let's view another example. Okay, let's take a look at Mattel. Now I'm going to jump straight to the equity curve here. Okay, now I can look at this a couple of different ways. I did generate pretty consistent income over the first 190 days. I caught a big move right around 195 days, and it hasn't done much since. So that could be due to corrections in the stock, corrections in the market, etc. But again, this flat period, it's actually, you know, over the course of the first, let's say, 140 days, this system was trading very, very consistently against Mattel. Okay. Now, let's say that we wanted to run multiple system tests against multiple instruments. We have the ability to do that. Now, to save time, I actually do have one that was run not too long ago. Let's take a look at the reports. I believe it's that one. So what I did is I actually tested all of our Teach Talk trade systems, which there are 11 total ones, against about 2,200 instruments. I believe it was the TSX total. So we did the system test over the course of a year, and what I want to know is, out of these different systems, which ones are performing the best. So I'm going to sort by my best profit. The Bollinger Band system was actually the highest profit stock, so let's take a look at that. So I'm going to click on View. Now it's going to give me a list of all the instruments that were tested, and again, this is on the TSX. I'm going to sort by net profit again. So we have found that the Bollinger Band system has actually performed against the TSX very, very well, and especially Myos technology. So let's take a look at that one. Now, my buy and hold performance here, or profit, was $792, but by actively trading this system, you would have generated $9,100. Let's take a look at the equity curve. Now, this is kind of, again, what I was talking about a little bit earlier, in that we were generating consistent income up until about 200 days, where we got a lot of our profit off of this this one move, and then we've been sideways since. Okay, so take that into account when you're looking at you know, your analysis and exactly what to, you know, what to base it on. So if we're looking through another example, now this is an example of something that's been performing very well over the course of the last right around 90 days, a little under 3 months. It's been performing very well consistently. So we can take a look and say, okay, this system has been reacting to this stock very well over the course of the last 3 months. Maybe that is really, maybe this system has really started to predict the price action of this stock and its behavior moving forward. Okay. Now, with the exception of when you're giving a webinar and you're talking a whole heck of a lot through it. Running through this progression only takes a matter of minutes. I can take an exploration of a couple of thousand instruments. I can whittle it down to 30 or 40 instruments that I am looking for trade opportunities within. And then I can come in here and test my system against those 40 or 50 opportunities to identify the 3 or 4 trade opportunities that I really want to do further analysis and possibly place a trade on. You can run through that entire workflow within the matter of a couple of minutes versus going out there and running through 60, 100, 500 charts like some people do. Metastock does have that capability to eliminate that workflow. Also, with the expert commentary and having all these different experts within Metastock, it's very easy to add different things to your trading system, to your methodology. The market is ever changing, so therefore, as traders, we must always be ever changing as well. But by keeping true to that workflow and being able to settle into taking the same steps every single day, but maybe making a few tweaks to our system, that's how we're really most effective, as well as, obviously managing our trade, etc. Now, definitely in the comments box, please write any questions that you have. I'm going to wrap up here very shortly. I want to give you guys a link that you can actually take a look at to get a trial of Metastock through Investor Inspiration. They're very gracious in letting us speak today and letting me fill in for Jeff. If you go to metastock.com/LP, what it will actually give you the opportunity to do, and I have the website pulled up, gives you the opportunity to actually go through and just get a 3-month trial of Metastock. And how we do this is if you pay for a 1-month subscription to Metastock, we'll throw in 2 additional months at no cost. And this will also come with some training materials, because I know that as a trader, when you're looking at different charting softwares, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. So we want to eliminate as much of that learning curve as possible. So it's this metastock.com/LP, and we'll take you straight to the link where you can sign up with that 3-month trial. Okay, I'm just looking through some of the comments. Yeah, the backtester is Niraj was saying that in using the backtester, it's very good as far as long trades. He uses it short-sided trades as well, but apparently it's not as effective on short trades. And a lot of times that's going to have to do with the system that you are using, as well as the rules that you're using. But that's really why the backtester is in place, is to identify what system you should be using. So for example, if I want to implement Bollinger Bands into my trading system, and it's not currently, what I can do is I can run my system tests while learning how to use Bollinger Bands effectively, and kind of add it that way and see if it's really, if it's been performing well. Let's say I only trade the S&P 500. Well, I want to know that the Bollinger Bands are performing well on the S&P 500 before I start adding that into my system and my analysis. And there's a lot of different things that I can take from that. So I don't want to run over time here. Please go to metastock.com/LP for your 3-month trial. If you have any questions, you can come into metastock.com/sales chat. You definitely ask any questions. We can help you out there. Just mention that you were on this webinar today, and they can still give you the 3-for-1 trial or any other promotions that we're running currently.